straightening out my... Alright. Just get my drink. Alright. Let's get this show on the road, people. Let's get this show on the road. Right, so un momento. Just gonna be opening this up. Wait for a few people to just log on. I'll share it from here. Is that all right? We is live. Almost done. Tune in, folks. Okay, is that shared? It is indeed. All right. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا Juan Ying Layth. Bienvenidos a todos, people. Bienvenidos a todos. Bakhair Ragale, Khushamadid, and Swagatam. Right, so, ¿qué está pasando, mi gente? ¿Qué está pasando? What's going on, man? What's going on? Wasif, ahlan wa sahlan. Muhammad Faiz Rasool. Is that Mufti Saab? Allah, tasharraft. We've got Salam from Vancouver. Naveed saying, Lala Tiko. बहुत बढ़िया है बहुत मेहरबानी. Right, Umar Ali. Right, what's going on, people? What's going on? How have you been? I'm good. I'm just recuperating, resting, chilling. That's all it is, man. Just doing my own little research, getting on with things. Just trying to, those of you that have known, I had a little fracture kind of thing, and just waiting on that to heal. And so pretty much homebound, really chilling out, trying to catch up on all these TV series. Well, what else is there to do, people, in this dunya? Ma, you know, وَمَاذَا بَعْدَ الْحَقِّ إِلَّا الضَّلَالِ. All right, salam from Philippines. Ahlan wa sahlan. All right, people. We is international. Right, we've made it global. We is the global. All right. Love the ear. Shukran. I also love the earring. Right, so what is going on, mi gente? Claire Jones, ahlan wa sahlan, bienvenidos. Right, so guys, now some of what we'll be taking a look at today. There are obviously your questions that you've already posted and that you're posting live stream, of course. But I will be discussing this Ustad Osama Canon issue. What is going on? What is the masala? What is the the Mufti masala to put on the masala? What is this whole controversy, the scandal, man? Got to handle the scandal. Right, so we're going to handle the scandal a little later on. Look at this, somebody saying, Frowdy Hamri Jan is online. Oh, we've got Kazi doing it, Kazi Imam Walid, ahlan wa sahlan. Right, people, so this thing I'll be taking a look at. Those of you tuning in, Rahizi, Riz, Ahlan wa Sahlan, click like, click share, people, get this out there. So I will be taking a look at this. What are my thoughts on this scandal? Obviously, people who already know me. इसमें अब ये कोई छुपी छुपाई हुई बात नहीं है. It's like my views. I'm sure some of you have already guessed them. There was a little back and forth a Twitter clash. Twitter clash with a tiny Twitter clash with Sana Saeed G, the reporter. Who rather. Right, so and look, I speak my mind. You know what I'm saying? I will, if I don't like something, I will say as I feel it. Whether I'm right or wrong is a different issue, but I'm not, I'm not doing this to kind of appeal to a particular, I don't know, to toe a particular line or to do something like this. I will say it as I believe it. Okay, so what I believe to be the haqq, I will say. So I did have that back and forth, but I will be in line with that Osama Canon controversy or the scandal. I will be discussing things like accountability. Okay, what does it mean to be accountable? And the discussions with that, because that's a deep topic as well, that, what does that mean, and accountable to who, and accountable, what is all of that about? And also this gender wars, this gender war. So people make love, not war. This one not nice. This the gender wars between the man and the woman. There's this unnecessary sense of kind of like a venom being pushed against. And I do sense this, I mean, as a man, I sense I sense that there is a lot of anti-man, not everybody, but there is, unfortunately, like this kind of man-hating, I don't know, like this not just rhetoric, but this propaganda that is out there. And I feel that this makes life difficult for everyone, and it shouldn't really be that way. So I will like to talk a bit about that. And that's not, by the way, I'm not saying this all women are like. They're not at all. I mean, I feel that these women may actually even be a minority of women, but who are very vocal. And the problem is they can poison the minds of certain other people, and not provide a solution, but just provide a problem. The tu kon mein khamkha. It's that famous proverb that who are you? I'm just, like, don't worry about me. Because those of you that will recall last week when I did a summary of Jonathan Brown's take on slavery, and I did mention this, how you could break his gridlock. And I spoke about what is, I used the ambiguous picture paradigm. And I gave an example. Those of you that haven't seen that, please do watch that. I explain how slavery, and I tackle the topic, and I take the bull by the horns, really, because it's not true. I disagree that Jonathan Brown said you couldn't really get out of this, we're gridlocked. But I broke the gridlock, I said, maybe, many people will come and it may be a dead end for them. But I am not just anybody, What's that dialogue of Nana Patekar where the guy challenges him and he says, "Baap ko bhej." Tere bas ki baat nahi hai. He says, "Go send your dad." This is above you. So the thing is that my point is that when I explain that once certain things are brought into the psyche, they can't be removed. You can't unlearn them. And I gave the example of I had this kind of ambiguous figure, and I showed it to you, and I said, well, when I showed you the trophy, and And then I said, okay, now I took it away and I said, I'm going to tell you about this, about a different image in this. And once I explain it, not only will you see that image, you won't be able to unsee it. So I explained the face palm and the person doing this. Now, when I showed you the picture after that, you can only see the face palm. Now, this, what I was calling the, this kind of this rise to consciousness that happens, this ambiguous picture effect. It's the same thing with mindsets out there. When you, like, people could be living a happy or reasonably content life, but you start telling them things like, no, you're actually not fulfilling yourself. So for example, imagine there's this thing of, like, let's say domestic chores. Now, in many societies, women may pride themselves on domestic chores. That's actually in a huge part of the world. Now, because it's seen down in these societies for women to do domestic chores, it's kind of like denigrated and seen as, oh my God, are you a slave or something? Now, once you plant that seed, that person is no longer content, who could have previously been happy, just going about their daily lives, doing things. They could have been like, well, no, this is my house, I'm happy to do this. But now when you plant a seed, they feel that, oh, well, maybe, I don't know, like, maybe I should be rebelling against this. And like this is just this is an irrelevant example about domestic chores, but about men, for example, in general. Oh, men are like this, men are all like this, men are like this, men are just misogynists, men are just this, men are just this. And then what happens is it leaves these poor women in a mental situation, a psychological state that is incapable. It's very difficult to ever have a relationship with any man after that. You see, because once you change that mindset, you become too conscientious. And so I just feel that, yeah, but we'll come back to this kind of psychobabble later on, people. This is not to, by the way, when I say this stuff, it's not to justify the wrong actions of men. I'm not here to justify anybody's action. Men can deal with their own goddamn responsibilities. It's not to in any way suggest that. That's not what I'm doing. Okay, so, and when I come to that topic, I'll be very clear about that. Okay, so cool. Let's first of all, Claire Jones says, "What? He's not touching my washing machine ever. I love chores." Right, so what's going on, people? What's going on? The Faiz Rasul Saab says, I've had a wider experience of work in different Sharia councils. A non-Muslim woman does job, but she equally shares in expenditures, but Muslim woman does job and she does not share because she says that this is not her obligation. It's true. I'd like to, by the way, people, this is Mufti Muhammad Faiz Rasul Saab, an amazing, enlightened, venerated, senior scholar of the Muslim diaspora here in the UK. I think, unless I'm correct, that Mufti Saab is usually between, I think, Bristol and the Midlands, Birmingham and other places. And he is involved in Sharia councils and generally in advising the community as well. And so people who want to reach out to Mufti Saab, please do. He's very, and he has that connect with the elder generation as well and the younger. So just want to say that. So much love for tuning in, Mufti Saab. But I wanted to add on this point that there is, the reason I say this, people, I don't just, this kind of thing I'm putting out there. I'm saying it because a lot of men are too scared of saying these things, believe it or not. And this is bad because we're in an age where people are like, they feel that they can't even express their opinion without being called misogynistic or without being called names. So they just bottle it in. But what happens is that adds to the rage. So it's good to have discussions. It's good to voice concerns. As a little plug in there, inshallah, soon come. I'm hoping by the end of this year, my podcast to be up and running on difficult dialogues and crucial conversations, people. So it's where I will be in dialogue with people. They don't have to be religious authorities, they can be, but other people as well, on what are difficult kind of dialogues, so they can be had. Because these dialogues need to be, I believe they have to be kind of had out there. Like we have to have them. So so that's my and I was going to say this because and this is not just Muslims, by the way, although I think Muslims, we are feeling this, but even in the broader, I feel this is not a religious specific thing. In the broader society, there's a lot of people that, they feel that the system, everything is kind of not fair to especially towards men. Now, ironically, because that's what you would think, that no, but this whole system is, but this is what people feel. I'm telling you, why do you think people I think Jordan Peterson is an amazing, enlightened genius who's incredibly articulate. I love him, but I'm just saying, why do you think people like that have had such an immense following? Because they've just had the courage to say what a lot of men who are disenfranchised from society are feeling. So they feel that, and then he's labeled for this far right, where really his views are very liberal. He's not a far right person. So, but this is but these are things that need to be kind of said out there. And so, yeah, but I was just putting that out there. And with the Sharia councils thing, it's true, because I have had a lot of women sometimes contact me about, see, if I just put a full stop there, it'd be like, huh? What, this scandal? It's to do with relationships coming to an end. And people will say that, look, my husband left me. And it happens the other way as well. Women leave men as well. It's not just the other way. But I'm just giving you an example. The husband leaves the wife, and the wife will say, look, he gave me a talaq and left. And he may be an absolute, I don't know, what do you want to call him, a jerk or whatever for doing that. And I would support that. I'm not saying the person is a good person. He could be a horrible person. Now, she says he can't just do that. He can't. This is, and you think, well, no, like, he can, but it's a horrible thing. I don't think he should do that, but he should take his responsibility. But if he does, he does. It's a free country. Let's say if a person says, look, I don't want to be in this relationship, and he leaves, even if he's doing it for selfish reasons, but you can't force the person to stay. So then they will say, you see, this is followed by the question, okay, so what are my rights? Like, what rights does Islam give me? So I know exactly what people are asking here. And I will say, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by rights? So they'll say, rights. So I will say purposely to people, oh, well, Islam gives you the right to freedom of speech. It gives you the right to freedom of movement. It gives you the right to... People go, no, I don't mean that. They'll be like, nahi yaar, wo to hum janat hain. We know all of that. Yellow say. They say, obviously. I mean, do I get the right? I mean, his money. I say, acha. To ye bolo, sarkar. Why don't you say money? Why don't you say he left me? How much of his money do I get to keep? But that sounds horrible to say that. So we sugarcoat it in nice words like rights. Zalim dunya, papi sansar. This is the thing. See, people, this world is nothing but dog eat dog at the end of the day. Everybody, kuch nahi sivaye musalsal fareb hai. Dekha hai zindagi ko nihayat kareeb. It's nothing but a perpetuous deception. The poet says, I have seen this world up close and near. So this is my point, that look, everybody's out there for themselves. But I just feel anyway that what needed to be said. Let's move on to some of your questions. Well, I've had one question straight away about Milad that somebody has been asking me quite a bit. Somebody said, if she has more money, do you get... Yeah, in the system you would get money from either ways, although it's tilted in favor of the women. That is the British legal, the English legal system is tilted that way. But men usually don't say that, generally speaking. I've never come across, I'm sure they may take it or things, I don't know, I don't follow people's life stories, but if a woman leaves a man, men suffer with, I mean, all human beings suffer with rejection, and men will suffer that way, and they will suffer with the ego, and they will suffer with issues of not being able to move on, and they may sometimes act like idiots and try to get violent or threatening or possessive, but that's the way that men, the trend that you will see, the pattern. I think it's absurd, but that's the pattern. You won't usually get a man saying, oh, she decided to leave me, okay, how much money do I get? That usually I've never heard that, but I have heard that on almost the majority, not all, but the majority of cases that have come in front of me. Whenever it's from the women's side, that is usually the first response after the fact that no, he can't go, he needs to be forced. And when you say, well, you can't force someone, then they say, well, okay, what do I get out of it? And that's usually not the other way around with men. They don't usually, whether they take it or not, God knows. But anyway, let's move on, people. We'll come back and touch up on this topic later on, right? After, when we get to the Osama Canon issue. That happened to me. Anisa, may Allah make things easy for you. See, there you go. A man did exactly that to Anisa. Well, you see, this is the thing. Whoever does it, it's not... And this is why, in many ways, I feel that, you see, the Islamic viewpoint on separation I feel, is more just than the system here. Because I feel that a relationship does not by default entitle a person to wealth. It entitles them to rights of being taken care of. Now, but once the relationship ends, to me, it doesn't. Now, I would accept arguments of where you contributed to something. That's a different argument. So, for example, a person contributed to a business, a person contributed to a household, but by default, by doing nothing, I don't feel you have personally, I don't agree with the concept of just a given entitlement by simply saying that, okay, we are now in a relationship, I'm just entitled straight away. I personally don't believe that holds merit. It is part of the system here. I know in America they have prenups and things like this, but in the UK they don't. So anyway, we'll come back to that. Let's tackle some other topics, people. Right, so a few people have asked me about Mawlid. Right, I answered this last week. I'll go through it again very briefly. Look, people, Mawlid is a classical debate. It's not something new. It is premised and predicated on the concept of innovation, or what is called a bid'ah in the Sharia, which means something that was introduced much after the lifetime of the Prophet and his companions. The issue was that, is there such thing as certain innovations that can still be good and embraced? This was the topic of contention among scholars. Traditionally, there were certain schools of thought, like the Medinan school, Imam Malik school, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, I believe himself. And there were some other scholars who were of the position that all innovations are always bad. And other schools, like the Kufan schools, the school of Imam Abu Hanifa, Shafi'i, and others, they kind of lean towards, no, if it's a good thing, it can still be good. So, as an example, let's say the Prophet never taught you a particular type of dhikr, a remembrance to do. So let's say he never did it himself, but he did tell you, you should do dhikr, you should remember God. Now imagine you come up with a special kind of codified dhikr, like you say, well, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this verse and I'm going to read this verse every day religiously 45 times, because I believe that 45, or let's say 63 times, because I believe the Prophet, lived up until the age of 63, and therefore, so you kind of contrive some meaning to this new ritual that you're doing. Now, but at the end of the day, you are just remembering Allah. You're not like kind of remembering some pagan gods or something. You're remembering Allah fundamentally, but you've introduced a new ritual. Now, the Medinan school didn't really welcome this. Imam Malik didn't, and neither did the early school for several centuries didn't really. The other schools did. They said it's okay because it's still a good thing. Like, he's not doing any harm, and he's just remembering Allah ultimately. So they accepted it. Now, based on that, the Mawlid debate is a part of that. So, but what happened is much later on, so like about 1,000 years after the Prophet, you see, this school of saying that innovations can be accepted so long as you're not doing harm, this school dominated the entire Muslim world then. Even the Maliki school and other schools all started to embrace that. And it was with the widespread of tasawwuf and things like this that these views spread. So today, these views are the majority of the Muslim world, unquestionably. The only thing is, with the rise of the Wahhabi Salafi movement, they kind of condemn these practices, and then so you've got that voice, and then you've got this dominant voice, which is that, if good innovations are okay. So that's the debate to it. So Mawlid just fits right in with that debate. Personally, to me, I stick with what Imam Malik taught. I don't personally go with innovations or new innovations. That's as a person, but I don't condemn these people that do things like that. I think at the end of the day, they're not doing any, they're remembering the Prophet and they're doing something good in that sense. So I wouldn't condemn someone. I wouldn't criticize someone who is, because somebody asked me, I thought you don't accept this, so why don't you criticize it? And I said, well, that doesn't mean I have to criticize it. I don't do it. I'm it's not my kind of thing. I'm not inclined. I'm not convinced with the argument. But people want to do it. They're convinced by it. Let them do it. It's not it's not something to make a deal out of, or to become obsessed about, or even to condemn. I don't believe you should be condemning people that practice Mawlid or anything like this. And likewise, people who are doing Mawlid shouldn't be condemning people who are not doing it. Because at the end of the day, they have no right to do that either, because it is an innovation in and of itself. So I feel, look, let people just do what they're comfortable with. There's many ulama that have argued for the legitimacy of Mawlid, because they've said, and like Subki, Suyuti, and all these great, mainly Shafi'i scholars, but loads of them, Ibn Hajar al-Haythami, and all these other great scholars have argued for it. So just let it be. So that's my point. And if you're not comfortable in doing it, don't do it. It's as simple as that. It's not confusing. Right. But yeah, I do disagree with, I've said this before, I do disagree with the whole parades. I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't like the whole, the OTT, over the top stuff. I don't like that. And I don't, people take out all this, and they block traffic, and they do these demonstration processions, and I don't see the point. What's the point of stuff like they bring all these massive cakes and they celebrate, and they kind of like cut a cake I find it quite ludicrous, I'll be honest with you. And then now it's got to a stage now where people, it's a bit confusing because I don't like, people start wishing each other like, by the way, it's, like, happy Mawlid to you. So somebody said that to me, and I just said, well, okay. For a moment I thought, what's the response? I said, yeah, happy Mawlid to you as well. I was like, but I just feel that fine. I mean, I can see it merging as a new culture, that's all. But the processions and all that, I think, is a bit OTT. That's my take. I don't know. Right, so what is going on? Right, did the Prophet ﷺ set the order of the surahs and the ayats? Okay, let's take a look at that. Somebody said, but don't LGBT have parades in every city? They are tolerated. Yeah, I'm against. I don't like those parades either. I don't see the. I don't like. I don't see the thing about parading. Like, if it's just blocking off streets, and it's just basically trying to put something in other people's faces. And I think just let people get on with their own life. I mean, it's different if people are doing it in a park. Like if you say, well, we're in a park, and we're going to be holding a fair there, or we're going to do something, or we're going to have a parade in a park, which is not really disturbing anybody in that sense. Traffic carries on. There's nobody's inconvenienced, and the LGBTQ want to hold their thing there. Somebody else wants to hold a parade there. The bloody, I don't know, somebody marching against something else wants to hold it there. People, they want to hold a Mawlid parade and procession there. I just feel when you do this on the roads and you block traffic and you inconvenience people, that I disagree with stuff like that. Dan Harden said, why do you answer the most dumbest of questions? Ab kaha kare baba. What can we do? This question, chat show, how many people do not answer from mainstream Mulvis? I don't know what that means. Can we buy watches with gold in it? Robert Kelly. Yes, you may. I've got a video on YouTube. Watch it. Can men wear gold? Or is gold haram for men? So I have answered that I am in line with that opinion of all those scholars and those Sahaba and so on who believe that gold was not haram for men. That the Prophet did condemn it, but it wasn't it was a kind of a measure to do with his immediate culture and his immediate companions, because of the kind of warrior lifestyle that they had. And some of the people were leaning in on luxury, and the Prophet just he kind of criticized it like that, because in that society luxury was not what was seen as, it was a very kind of warrior lifestyle. Hence in the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet did the same thing about agriculture. He said a similar thing about agriculture, like, as in, he said that what is this? Why? Because the Arabs of that, especially of that part of Arabia, they lived a very kind of warrior lifestyle. They weren't agriculturalists. There were farmers amongst them, but they weren't farmers by and large. So this is why it didn't mean that agriculture is haram, or agriculture, nobody should do farming. That would be ridiculous. But the Prophet, when he said, when he saw the agricultural tool in the person's house, and he said, this does not come into anybody's house except illa wa dakhala ma'ahu dhul, except being abased and dishonored and being denigrated will enter that house. Like, meaning, nobody gets this except they enter a state of, of being abased and dhul. But that wasn't a religious ruling. So, yeah, so that's my perspective. I have got that. Zamzam is for whatever it is drunken for. Is that a legit hadith? Zamzam lima shuribala. Allah. This, if my memory serves me correct, I read about 10 years ago. that I think Hafid al-Dumyati said the hadith is sahih. Acha! You think Mufti is no got memory? I read that Hafid al-Dumyati, he did tasheeh of that hadith, that az-zamzamu lima shuribala, that the hadith is that Zamzam is for whatever it is drunk for. Now, I believe that these things have a kind of psychosomatic effect, and there's I accept that, look, generally it is considered, because of its proximity to the Kaaba and it being a blessed place, it is understood to have this barakah. Although I am not so convinced of its origin story. I'm not so convinced of the story that Zamzam, and Ismail alayhi salam and that whole story like that. Allahu A'lam. Maybe it did happen, maybe it didn't. I do feel as a person, and my research is that there was a lot of Abrahamization, to do with Ibrahim alayhi salam, that there was a lot of Abrahamization that took place as Islam expanded into the northern Arabian territories. Okay, so because Islam was in the Hijaz, which is like, because the Arabian diaspora was, you had southern Arabia, which is like where Yemen and a bit of south Saudi Arabia and places like that would be today. Then you had like this region in the middle, which is where Hijaz and Mecca, Medina, and these kind of places, and other places would be the middle kind of region. And then you had the northern kingdoms, which were really places like Sham and the Levant and places like Iraq and places like, all of that was the northern Arabian kingdom. Now, a lot of Muslims, historians, have seemed to have turned a blind eye, whether it's an eye of ignorance to this, or they're just unaware. They think that the Arabian diaspora was the Jaziratul Arab, the Arabian Peninsula, which is what, the today predominantly Saudi and the small Gulf states. That's not true. The main Arabs were actually in the Middle East. They weren't in the Arabian Peninsula. The main Arabs today, historically, the vast majority of the Arabs, like we're talking probably, maybe 80%, 85% of all Arabs lived in the Middle East, not in the Arabian Peninsula. So they lived in places like Jordan, Iraq, Levant, these kind of regions historically, and most of them were Christian, and they were affiliates of the Byzantine kind of dynasty. And the others, like the Manadhira and the Bani Lakham and these tribes, their capital was Hira, and they were as protectorates of the Sassanid Empire. And this is where the main poets of pre-Islamic Arabs came from, like Nabigha, Dhubyani, and all these great Al-A'sha and Labid, and all these people lived up there in Iraq. They didn't live in the Arabian Peninsula. So when Islam spread there was this Abrahamization that took place, that a lot of people started to in order to forge greater bonds between themselves and the other Arabs, they did, I feel, forged a lot of stories to do with Ibrahim alayhi salam being the great ancestor of the Arabs. I'm not so sure Ibrahim alayhi salam is the great ancestor of the Arabs. Maybe Ibrahim alayhi salam, whether he had some input or not, it's difficult to say. Because if you think about it, the Quran speaks much about Ibrahim alayhi salam. It does. Ibrahim alayhi salam is mentioned time and time again in the Quran. Yet never in the Quran does Allah say that Ibrahim is the father of the Arabs. Never says that. And Ibrahim alayhi salam is never mentioned as you in the Quran as you are the father of the Arabs, or Ismail is the father of the Arabs. It's never mentioned in the Quran. But yet later on, this becomes the dominant belief. So whether maybe before some people did believe it. I feel that maybe Quraysh did believe it. But was it actually true is another story. So did the Prophet ﷺ go back through to Ibrahim alayhi salam and stuff like this? I don't know. I mean, you see, it's because the Prophet himself in a hadith, when they took the Prophet's nasab to Adnan, who is still within the Arabs, the Prophet said, after that they all lie. He said that in the Sahih hadith. He said, بَعْدَ هَذَا كَذَبَ النَّسَابُونَ. He said, after Adnan, they all lie. Now, somebody could argue, yes, but in the other hadith, he calls himself the son of Ismail. And he does, but did he mean the son as in I'm a prophetic son because I call to the same message that Ibrahim alayhi salam and he calls to, or did he mean actual son? I guess I don't know. I'm not convinced with all the Abrahamization. I do see that there was a lot of, Kuch, there was quite a bit that they slightly, people blagged quite a bit. And a good example of this is the story of Safa and Marwa. Safa and Marwa is definitely a made-up story to do with Hajar. And the proof for this is if you go to the tafasir, you will see that the Sahaba from Medina, the Ansar, many of them said when they went on the Hajj, that we will not do the Safa and Marwa because it's a pagan tradition. And that's Tafsir Qurtubi brings it. Many of the Mufassirin bring it. That in fact, Qurtubi says, وَقَالَ بَعْضُ أَهْلِ الْعِلْمِ min al-Ansar, that some of the most knowledgeable people of the Ansar, the Sahaba, said that Safa and Marwa is a pagan tradition. It was to do with your two statues, because it was basically, there was these two, this god and this goddess, this statue, who were a romantic couple. I've forgotten it'll come to me, I'll check it up. The woman goddess, her name was Na'ila, I remember that, and the guy's, I've forgotten his name now. But these statues of Na'ila and her lover were meant to represent certain icons, figures, that they loved each other, but they had sexual intercourse or something in the haram, and they were turned into stone. So this is what the pagans believed. So them being on top of the separate mountains, they were separated, and they weren't allowed to, and that represented their struggle. They weren't allowed to kind of meet with each other. So this was why the Ansar from Medina said that that's a pagan tradition. It's got nothing to do with Islam. Why should we go between Safa and Marwa? And then Allah says in the Quran, you see, it's interesting because Allah says in the Quran that Inna Safa wal Marwata min sha'airillah. You see, Allah does not say about the story of Hajar. He could have said, oh yeah, but Hajar ran across this, and she ran 7 times, and that's why I want you to do it. Allah says that this is now, as in now in the Prophet's time, it is a symbol for the remembrance of Allah. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ بِهِمَا, and tatawwa here does not mean tanaffal, man tanaffala bihima, because the sa'i is not nafal, it's an obligation. Man hasibahuma ta'atan fatatawwa bihima. Whosoever considers them to be a ta'a, whosoever does this considering it to be a worship to God, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ شَاكِرٌ عَلِيمٌ, then Allah is grateful for your gratitude. So this goes to show that Allah in the Quran, Safa and Marwa is mentioned, but there is no Hajar story. And it was the ideal place to mention it. So it seems very plausible that the Hajar story was part of, because that was the point to answer it, because the Ansar said it's a pagan thing. So Allah, that would have been the response to say, well, actually, what are you talking about? This is from Abraham. But Allah didn't say that. So it supports the idea that this was later an invented story to kind of support the Abrahamization, to build bridges between the various Arab kingdoms. But I mean, Yeah, so anyway, let's move on from the right. So this is not to, and don't get freaked out by this stuff. This stuff isn't to freak people out. This stuff is, look, so what? It's a symbol. If you do it today as you did, as the Prophet did it, he did it out of remembrance and dedication to Allah. So this is the thing, that the ritual was devoid of its pagan origin. So it didn't carry that remembrance anymore. Because so in that case, what's the big deal now? Why get upset? I don't see this as a reason to get upset, because I think that's in the time of when the Prophet was doing his Hajj, it didn't have those pagan things anymore to it. So the Prophet did it as a, nusukan lillah. He did it like as an act of servitude to God. So, so Allah, as he says, is grateful. Yeah. So this then opens another interesting question about things like, what about other practices when they no longer have this is why I've said things like Halloween are not haram, because look, these things have lost their pagan origin. And if you look at it, a lot of the Islamic thing had pagan origins. They didn't, like Arafah. Where the hell do you think Arafah came from? Like think about it. In the Quran, Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ. That Hajj is to the Kaaba. But Hajj is Arafah. It's not the Kaaba. So Hajj, you can miss the Kaaba and still have Hajj, but you can't miss Arafah and have Hajj. So Al-Hajj Arafah. So where did the standing at Arafah come from? It came from the custom that was already there. That the Arabs used to have, the Moslems, they used to have the fairs of trade. And each month it used to move around in a clockwise circle. And then at Dhul Qa'dah it would get closer. Then for 8 days it was in, It was in Arafah. But that's where they used to, and then they would have a religious kind of standing. And the Quraysh wouldn't go there, because the Quraysh normal people didn't used to, other Arabs, their Hajj was at Arafah and Quraysh was just with the Kaaba. And the Prophet kind of merged between the two, kind of thereby creating an equality amongst people. But it's not something to get freaked out about. But otherwise, where did Arafah come from? It didn't come from Abraham, alayhi salam. And but these things are not a big deal. Like, I don't know why to some Muslims it scares them, but to me it's liberating, because it goes to show that, look, at the end of the day, the main thing was the connection with God. And the Prophet came and he did that. And he established that with people. And yes, he was within his environment, within his culture, and those symbols were symbols that he used. He used, and there was origin to some of it. Like, I do believe that the Kaaba, and the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam originally building the Kaaba. So I do believe that. Now, so, there was origin to that. And then some of it he expanded upon. Anyway, so right now, let's take some other questions. What else is going on? Somebody said about the stoning of the Jamarat. I don't know exactly what that is about. I think, in my perception, that was about stoning the three main goddesses, Allat wal Uzza wa Manat. And it was denouncing them. I think it was to do with that. And later on, it also got Abrahamized. So they turned it into the Abrahamization. And of like this story of Ibrahim alayhi salam was walking along there, and then he threw stones. I think it probably was more likely the Prophet pelting what may have been idols there. And that's the kind of reality. That's what I think anyway. ये जात तमाशा बन चुकी है, दुनिया के मेले से थक चुकी है. What's that? आग हो तो जलने में देर कितनी लगती है, बर्फ के पिघलने में देर कितनी लगती है. That's the thing. It's an amazing poem. What was चाहे कोई जैसा भी हम सफर हो सदियों से, रास्ता बदलने में देर कितनी लगती है. Allah, Allah. No matter how long one has been a companion in life, to change his or her direction, how long does it actually take? चाहे कोई जैसा भी हम सफर हो सदियों से, रास्ता बदलने में देर कितनी लगती है. How long does it actually take in changing it's amazing. That's, I believe, of Farhat Abbas. उम्र भर के रिश्ते भी पल में टूट जाते हैं. That lifelong relationships can break in a snap. उम्र भर के रिश्ते भी पल में टूट जाते हैं. सोच के बदलने में देर कितनी लगती है. That how long does it actually take for an idea, for a mindset to just change? People, they Allah. So what is going on? What's somebody saying? I don't know. Some people on here. Right. Are Ahlul Kitab our brothers in faith, or are they polytheists? No, they are our brothers and sisters, our brethren in faith. They are from the Abrahamic tradition. Right. What's your view on Ibn Sina? I think Ibn Sina was a great thinker. We need many more thinkers in this world who are, one thing we lack in Islam from within, like not within Islam as the religion, but within Muslim tradition, as in Muslims. I feel that one thing we have seriously lacked has been a critical thought. Like, we don't actually have a tradition of critical thought. We've had some critical thinking, and even then it's always been very criticized, very condemned, very so we don't really have things like that, and it's a shame. I feel that a critical evaluation of our tradition is so needed. Mufti Saab, you must write on archaeology and anthropology of Islam. Oh, I wish I could. आजकल पढ़ता कौन है? Nobody reads. This is why we've got to do lives. All right. People still read in this day and age. What? Somebody said, what time after the Prophet did the Abrahamization begin, in my understanding? I think it began with the early kind of conquests and thereafter. Maybe definitely within the first 100 years after the Prophet, within that time. As the companions and other Arabs moved north and started to mix with the Ghassanid kingdom and the Lakhmid kingdom and things like that, I think they tried to build bridges, and a lot of stories emerged at that time. How do you feel about mathematical miracles in the Quran? I think these things are they're fine if they, on a subjective level. See, because to me, the Quran is dynamic. It is meant to have a dynamic nature to reflect the dynamic nature of human beings. So I might read a verse of the Quran and it might hit me in a certain way. You might read a verse of the Quran and it hits you in that way. I feel that this was, if we want to use the word miracle, this was it of the Quran. That it was to have a very individual impact if it does. I'm not saying it has to have that individual impact, but this is the versatile nature, the dynamism within the verses of the Quran. So, I feel that there's nothing. If a person himself read something and thought this is mathematically wow, then that's fine. And if he wants to share that, that's fine. But I wouldn't get carried away in saying that is proof that Islam is correct, or that is, you see, like some people have said, for example, let's say, I don't know, Ha Mim, and now that this has been said, the letter Ha and Mim come in this surah so many times, or some people have said that the amount of times Allah mentioned believers, he mentioned disbelievers in the same number of time in this surah and this, and that is amazing. Like, it sounds incredibly calculated. It sounds like above chance. But that said, if you start preaching this as your basis for the veracity and the veritability of Islam, as in this is what proves Islam to be valid, then people will just pick up a Harry Potter book and find the same thing and say, well, look, there you go. So this, I don't agree with it being a universal or an objective miracle, but a subjective miracle, sure, if that makes sense. What is the positive case for Hadith to refute Quranists? You see, to me, the thing is this, that we know certain Hadith have carried truths. We know this. Apart from just the average likelihood, from other elements, like today, they could be, so for example, we've known something and today they found certain findings that have demonstrated that, and it was also transmitted in a hadith. So that, okay, so it shows that some of these things, they definitely have carried truths. Now, one could say, well, okay, that doesn't mean all hadith have to be true, and I agree, all hadith are not true, but it shows that some they have carried down truths. So what I would do is say that, well, in that case, you see, so we go by the principle that it doesn't clash with reason. ما لم يباين المعقول ولم يخالف المنقول ولم يناقض الأصول. It does not clash with with reason. It does not contradict the Quran, and it does not uproot an Islamic principle. And then the hadith is fine. Okay, so that's my approach. Somebody said, yes, like the Great Fire of Medina hadith that was predicated. Yeah, sure. I mean, things like this or other things that you will find. Oh, Billy's in the house. All right. Leon. All right. What is it? Lion. That's what we're talking about. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf stated that early Muslims did pray through intercession, and was this common and acceptable? Has this any validity? Right, okay, did early Muslims pray through intercession? I'm not sure what exactly that means. How, like the practical scenario of that. Does that mean like they would say, Ya Allah, I think some intercession on this level is just human. In the sense, like, if you said things like, Ya Allah, please do, for the love, like we say to people, like part of our language, for the love of this, just do it. That kind of thing. Like, people will say, oh, for the love of God, do this, or for the love of this, do. So did people say an equivalent, like in their du'as, Ya Allah, for the love of the Prophet, please do this? That kind of stuff, I think, yeah, they probably did, because that's just a very human kind of trait, really. It's not something to be so caught up about. Do I think they used to come to the Prophet and say, Ya Rasulullah, give me this and do all this. Is this what intercession means? I don't know what exactly it means. If this is what it means, then no, I definitely don't think they did stuff like that. Billy, your government name got exposed. Yes. Now you're on a watch list. Anisa says some Christians pray to Jesus. Yeah, because, I feel, this is my thoughts. I feel that one of the most difficult things for human beings is monotheism. I think we take it for granted because we think, oh, it's simple. Oh, just one God. Yeah, it's simple. God who just created this. But it's actually very difficult because, you see, what happens is a God that's transcendent becomes an impersonal God. You see, it's difficult to kind of relate to or to build a kind of relationship with a very transcendent God. Now, I feel that this was what the mission, the true mission of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, to bridge between this personal and impersonal. Because people, they accepted God as the transcendent, but they needed personal gods. So they created these images and created things as personal. So I feel that was one of the greatest accomplishments and achievements of the Prophet ﷺ, and we're still struggling with it. Was to kind of to show to people that you see the transcendent as impersonal because he's transcendent. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ, but Allah, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There's nothing. He's not like that. He's not like anything you can imagine. So I feel that's my way of looking at it. Nick, Zishan, ahlan wa sahlan. बेखुदी ले गई कहाँ हमको, देर से है इंतजार. Allah, Allah, Allah. People, that is Mir Taqi Mir, the legend. In Urdu, he was called the god of Urdu poetry. Khuda-e-Sukhan. Frank the Ant said, I don't think he sees YouTube comments. Well, normally I don't, but today I seem to be seeing them. You tend to explain many miracles scientifically, but how then can you explain what is written about Allah speaking about Jesus who revives the dead? Yeah, now I have explained in the past that, look, this thing about Ihya'ul Mawta, what did this mean? I've said that some scholars have taken that in a few different interpretations. They've said one interpretation is that that they weren't actually dead in the sense that they were perceptibly dead. That was one kind of interpretation, which, to be fair, is well within reason. I mean, even up until a couple, 100 years ago or a couple of 100 years ago, this was actually quite a phenomenon that people would kind of get up after being dead. Another interpretation that several Mufassirin have given is that this was actually a metaphor. That Jesus, he was speaking to the Jews that you had, because he was Jewish, that you have killed this message of God, that you've turned it into a corpse, that this God gave you these commandments, God gave you this connection, and you've turned it into just mere rituals and kind of legalisms, and this is nothing but a corpse. And what Jesus did came to revive the dead. He said that, that that I've come to make for you that again, good and halal, and which you've kind of made forbidden, deprived yourselves of. مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيَّ. I'm only in reinforcing that which went before me. And I feel that I'm kind of inclined to that understanding. But it may have been that it was a person who was perceptibly dead, and that it could be that as well. Because it wasn't that, oh, Jesus was just going around bringing the dead back to life. Because what's the purpose of that? And why didn't he bring other dead people back to life? Whether it was Lazarus or the one or two, the little girl, or somebody said I think in one there's a mention of another, but there's nothing else. Like, why not go and bring back everybody? And so in the New Testament was written at least 100 years after Jesus. Almost anything at least 80 years to 100 years after Jesus. I mean, these are not the words of Jesus necessarily. These words are being taught by disciples of Jesus. That too in an age when a lot of politics have taken place as well. You have to remember that. People sometimes use language that other people take literally. Yeah. I'm telling you that, look, it should be the very New Testament. Like, let me give you an example. There was a sheikh who, okay, what the hell? It's live and unrestricted. I met this sheikh in the UK. Well, Sheikh Ahmed Darwish. Okay. Now, he disappeared after that, so I don't know where he is right now. But he came at one point many years ago, and he was going to set up in the UK, and he's a student of some of the Ghumaris. And he's also, like many sheikhs, they have like a peer following, like Peer Sahib. He's like a sheikh of a tariqah. He's got his own tariqah and his murids. And this is the problem with cults and acolytes. You see, because people, now, this sheikh himself, he told me, oh yeah, I used to, when I was in Cairo, I used to kind of go to the libraries to lock myself there, and I'd just study, like this. Do you know his murid who said to me, and this is like an intelligent person, he said to me, our sheikh, when he would be in Cairo University, the books would talk to him. Like, he would lock himself in this cupboard, in this library, and the books would talk to him. And I said, yeah. And I thought he's just being creative with his. And he said, no, like they'd really talk to him. I said, what do you mean? Like, he would like start researching and the books are talking. They're like, no. When he says the books talk to him, he means literally speak to him. And these guys really believe this. Now, that sheikh had said to them that, when I kind of like to lock myself in this place and study, and the books talk to me when I'm reading them. This was what he was talking about, was unless he was totally in some other world, he was just using just literary speech. If I say, when I get into it, this art, it talks to me. I don't mean it literally starts talking and it has speech and I start listening to it. And this is in our age. A person is hearing something directly from the mouth of somebody, and he's trying to tell me that this is literal. Like a book, actually, like this book is talking, not an audio book. It's not audible. The book in the library is talking to him. And so this is the kind of naivety that we've got in our, in the 21st century. So when people took certain words of Jesus 100 years after him and represented them in a slightly different way, why are we so surprised? ¿Por qué? Right, so what is going on? Yusuf! Sheikh Yusuf is in the house. Ahlan wa sahlan, people. Right, that Sheikh, do you believe the Quran did an angel fly down to give revelation? Was it? You see, when it comes to revelation, my understanding is that we just don't know how revelation works. We don't understand. I believe that all the imagery to do with revelation was simply just symbolism that was to make people have a frame of reference. Why? Because in the hadith itself, the Prophet says revelation is like a ringing in my ear. That's it. He says, like, sometimes I just hear this ringing like a bell that's non-stop in my ear, and then it's revealed. That's what it is. And sometimes he said, I feel a kind of weight, and he's trying to explain an experiential phenomenon. And sometimes, so it's not this, but I suppose it's easy to tell as a narrative that, look, an angel comes, tells me, I learn. So did it have to be in this imagery? It didn't have to be. That could just be imagery, symbolic imagery, to help people understand it. I mean, could it be literal? It could be, but I'm not saying it has to be. I'm not saying you have to believe in that literal imagery. Although I do believe as a narrative, the imagery would actually fly, and other narratives wouldn't fly throughout history. So, yeah. Ilam Fakhruddin bin Rafidi. Get out of here. That can't be your name. Oh, Shaukat Waraj is in the house. Ahlan wa sahlan, ahlan wa sahlan. Right, so what is about the hadith? Don't let someone eat your food unless وَلَا يَأْكُلُ طَعَامَكُمْ إِلَّا تَقِي is the hadith in Arabic. That don't let somebody eat your food unless he's a person of taqwa. You see, this does not mean, the brother asked that, oh, does this mean you're not allowed to eat with non-Muslims? People, taqwa is not a Muslim thing. Okay, we don't monopolize taqwa. Taqwa is that sense of, that kind of sense of ethics, that sense of morality, that sense of consciousness, to not want to wrong someone. It's not a Muslim asset that has a stamp of Islam on it, full stop. So when the Prophet ﷺ said, وَلَا يَأْكُلْ طَعَامَكُمْ إِلَّا تَقِي, you see, there's a number of things going on here. The Prophet is encouraging people on certain, what kind of company they should keep. He's at the same time, he's outcasting people who are committing certain crimes and certain perpetrations. He's outcasting them. He's telling people to distance themselves from people who are like that, that are not of good character, that are not of it. This does not mean that kufr does not equate to bad character. Okay, I think that is, somebody said taqwa is only for the muttaqeen. Exactly, but it's who said muttaqeen equals mu'mineen? Who said that? You said it. Does Allah say that? Like, what I'm saying is, who are you, or who am I to judge someone and the sense of, one, their connection with God, even if they're not a Muslim? Who are you or me to judge that? And secondly, that just because people are not Muslim, but let's be honest, we assume that we make a simple reductionist equation: all non-Muslim equal kuffar, equal fujar, equal fusaq, equals this, equals that. Why? Let's just be real. Like, if we weren't Muslim today, would we convert to Islam? Ask yourself a very real question. Would you? I don't think, I'm being honest, if I wasn't born Muslim, would I? I don't know. Now, it's a difficult question, but I think it would be very difficult to embrace Islam, just because of the institutionalization of Islam, the way people are presenting Islam, the way they've kind of mutated Islam. The way it's become like by some people are like fascists. They want to just shove it down your throat and they want to control you. They want to use religion to control you. Yeah, we should be. But with your logic, what was the benefit of being Muslim? And Allah says Islam is only acceptable. Yes, that is true. But look, Allah says that inna dina indallahi al-Islam. That the true deen is submission. Yes. Says this in a context to people who are mushrikeen and who are saying, well, it's difficult, we can't have an impersonal transcendent God. Now, to be fair, much of the world today is not like that. It does still exist, but it's a minority. And then Allah says that, look, like if it's up to Allah, He can do whatever He wants. You know, it is the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah, Fakhruddin al-Razi and all these scholars write that Allah wants everybody can have salvation, Muslim or non-Muslim. Like, well, you know, tumhara kya ja raha hai? Why are you finding it problematic? You know, kahe ko pareshan ho rahe ho? You know, it's not like the people who have salvation, you're going to have to pay for them. You know, this is Allah Arhamur Rahimin, does as He pleases. Why, why is it bothering you? This dunya is for you. You worry yourself, concern yourself with yourself. Do you give primacy to reason over vis-a-vis, rather vis-a-vis revelation? I've said already that, you know, I've got a video on YouTube in much more detail answering this question, that it's actually a fallacy, really, because you see, this question, it's set up in such a way that it's a kind of like an uphill struggle. The question needs to be reframed, right? So the question really is that how does one understand revelation except through reason? How does one understand it except through reason? That is the question. To say, you see, what you're doing is you're pitting someone, like you're pitting reason against the Quran. That's wrong. The Quran is in line with reason, but if you have reason, you will know that that interpretation would be wrong then. Allah would never ask you in the Quran to come to His message by using reason, and then when you come to it, it contradicts reason. That would be just a ridiculous joke. It makes no sense. So this question is wrongly framed by dogmatists, by people who either that, you know, they lack some kind of understanding in the real world, or they're people who wish to exert control on others and wish to use religion to do so. That's what I would say. Asrar Rashid, somebody said something about discussing with Asrar Rashid. I would love to discuss with Asrar Ji. Asade, our lion, lion of Ahl Sunnah. Meow. No, I love Asrar Rashid Sahib and the Rashidiya. You know, maybe when I start my podcast, he will partake in a discussion. But the problem, you know what it is? Sometimes I don't even blame Sheikh Asrar. What it is he's got too much pressure from his following, and he's trying to please his following too much. He feels that, you know, he has to kind of like put the other person down. This is, you know, like if Sheikh Asrar was speaking to me, he'd feel that I know my following expects me to put him down, and I have to put him down, or I have to try and take a dig at him, or I have to try and do this, I have to try and, you know, and you think, well, you know, that see, you need to grow up. You know, the truth is, if you want to be a leader, And then these are followers. Let them follow you. They shouldn't be dictating to you if you want to be a leader. Kahe ka leader hai yaar. So this is that said, that reminds me. I read something by Sheikh Asrar today. Actually, I read it. All right, my beloved Janiman. Right. I read something by Sheikh Asrar today on voting, and I have to say, I totally agree with him on this point. Sheikh Asrar was saying that, look, because the elections are coming up, and he said that, look, Muslims need to wise up when it comes to voting. Don't vote based on race, on ethnicity. Don't vote based on a headscarf. Don't vote based on a surname. Don't vote based on bradri and zat and these kind of things, that they're chaudhries or these people are this or these people. Don't vote based on this. Vote based on reason. And for once, I was like, "Wah." I knew there was the voice of reason somewhere inside. Nati. But it is a true point. I see. Look, I have no this. See, I'm quoting Sheikh Asrar, and I'm saying I commend him, and I praise this thing that he said this, because it's true that us people, like Muslims in this country, especially the Pakistani community, they're like, oh, vote for this person, Chaudhry Saab, or vote for such and such, he's got a Muslim surname, or vote for somebody with a headscarf. Or why? Vote for somebody who's good. And he made a point. He said most of these people can't even speak English, these councillors. They speak like either bud English, or they don't even speak English. How are they going to represent you in Parliament? There's that Tan Singh of what was his name? Yeah, the Sikh politician who spoke out against Islamophobia and just general discrimination. Hats off to him. He did an excellent job, and that was highlighted by Asrar as well. But everybody knows that it was a viral clip. So I totally agree that, look, this is a genuine point. Elections are coming up. I think people should vote. I think that definitely Tories is not the way to go. But the UK is just in a mess. Nobody knows what the hell to do with the Brexit situation. This is like one of those situations that they're like, like they did it and nobody really thought it through. That's like an ideal Muslim scenario, isn't it? It's like they thought, I know, let's have a caliphate. Like, yeah, and then like, yaar, ye khilafat hoti kya hai? What exactly is a caliphate? Kaise so? This now, then they're kind of stuck. So it's like these people vote, let's have Brexit, yeah. They're like, okay, so how on earth do we do this? And it's impossible to Brexit is like virtually, given the current scenario with the Irish backstop thing, it's impossible. It's just ridiculous. But now they've dragged it on so long that people are just fed up and want it over and done with. But there is no over and done with because you can't get it done. Those of you that have seen the editing clip of the House of Commons, where it's got that, that two bud, the argument. I was going over the hill, right? And it's like, why? F you, you F you, you F you, you me. Have you heard it? It's hilarious. And it actually looks like the politicians are actually swearing. Such a funny clip. All right, people, let's move on. Let's take Mazari is in the house. Mazari, our wasted talent. Hi, Mazari. Vote Labour. Yeah, I do support Corbyn. I won't lie, but I am a bit disappointed in Corbyn not having been clear. Really, I felt that this country needed clarity, needed a leader to take charge, but he just wasn't. I felt he kind of fell a bit short. Right, so what's going on? Abdul Hussein G. Acha, I've seen it. Right, so you go to hill, yeah, and then you go down, yeah? Why me beep beep beep? You beep beep beep. It's a hilarious clip, people. You know what? Shall we take a look at Sheikh Osama Canon G's thing? Yeah, let's take a look at that, people. Let's take a look, you know. And let's just say it as it is, huh? والهجر أقتل لي مما أراقبه. الله 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 الله. أنا الغريق فما خوفي من البلل. Allah, what the Nabi said. He says that, you know, that this, he speaks about abandonment is worse for him. That's in the beginning. Hajru aqtalu li mimma uraqibu. You know, what I'm going through. He says, Anal ghariq, I'm somebody who's drowned. Fama khawfi min al balal. You think I'm worried about getting wet? Ya Mutanabbi. Mutanabbi was good. You got to give it to his poetry. Right, so let's take a look at the masala, people. The masala. Mufti masala coming on, people. This is Ustad Osama Canon. Right, people, click like, click share. Let's get this out there. Let's begin. It's a serious topic as well, but let's jump right into it. Those of you that are familiar, Ustad or Sheikh Osama Canon, an American da'wah activist, and I mean, it doesn't really need to be introduced. Everybody knows the great work of Osama Canon, and from the students of Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and that kind of whole, you know, clique and that backdrop of Zaytuna and California and stuff like that. He's, I believe, the founder of Ta'leef, and he's definitely the face of Ta'leef, the organization, involved in a lot of prison da'wah work and that kind of stuff throughout his life. Right now, and for the last few years, he has suffered from ALS, a very debilitating kind of condition, and it's rendered him completely, my understanding is, debilitated in the sense he's on a wheelchair, he can't speak, he can't, I think he, you know, needs help in almost most aspects of life. Now, there's a scandal that surfaced recently. His own organization kind of shared a statement saying that they've conducted a review. Allah. You know, it never, Muslim organization saying we conducted a review is never, it's never a good thing. You know, it's like a cha. And they said that we have found that Osama Canon to have been guilty of gross misconduct and blah, 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 blah. And they were very vague in the statement, not exposing what it was, but saying, hinting towards some kind of sexuality in there, of a sexual nature, and maybe something on finances or other thing, and just being quite vague. So they didn't say he did A, B, and C. They just said, oh my God, he did these horrible, horrible things. And then what they did is just left it to everybody's imagination. So then this has caught on like wildfire, and it's gone everywhere. And so we're going to break it down, what the main thing is, right? Put the other things aside, and I'll mention some of them as well, like as in like the genres. But so there's issues of alleged financial, that maybe he took a certain amount of money during his work there that he wasn't entitled, whatever. But there's business routes for that. You know, I mean, there's legal routes to take for that. So that's not what the big stir is about. The big stir is about he married several women. So he married women and he divorced them. So this secret short-lived marriages, that basically he was, you know, if he had an opportunity, he took the opportunity. This is what they're saying. They haven't mentioned the numbers, but I'm assuming that there may be a handful of cases. This is what I'm assuming. I don't know if there's more. I've heard that it's probably about 4 cases, 5 cases, something like this. Maybe there's some more. I don't know. So what had happened was Sana Saeed wrote, she's a journalist, I think for Al Jazeera or something. And she wrote an article saying, these people, men who hurt us and spiritual abuse. And I'm taking, we need to take these men to task. So I tweeted, to her article, I said, look, I'm calling BS on this whole spiritual abuse. Right, so this triggered a bit of a back and forth kind of thing. Now, I want to say one thing from the offset. This isn't about trying to justify Osama Canon's actions. This isn't about that. Okay, I'm not here to justify if he has, if he's been quote unquote like a jerk, they're saying to people, he may have. Most people have at some point in their lifetimes, being very rude or being inappropriate or being, everybody has done this at some stage in their life in some scenario. I'm not saying he hasn't, and I'm not about trying, that's not the purpose of this thing. The purpose is that we've got this new kind of onslaught of this rhetoric, spiritual abuse. What the hell is spiritual abuse? So they're saying spiritual abuse is spiritual abuse because we need a definition, people. We need a definition. So they're saying that this is acting in a way, and it's really only to do with stuff like sex and marriages. So, and they'll say that this is a kind of and some people have used the language sexual abuse. Now, sexual abuse is very specific. It is where you abuse someone sexually. It is a crime, and it is not this. So, okay, what are they actually saying? What is this spiritual abuse? What they're saying is that because he's in a position of leadership, that people come to him as an imam, he has an opportunity to charm many women. So he uses this platform to charm them. And that is abuse. So you think, well, okay, is that abuse? So yeah, because if he just charmed them at a bus stop, then that wouldn't be the same. Now, that wouldn't be abuse. But if he charmed them because he's a figure, then it's abuse because he's got this. It's a vertical relationship. Ah, right. Okay. So I want to kind of put a pause on that, because what they're trying to say is this is immoral, that these women are somehow vulnerable. Now, my point has been that, look, listen, if he's grabbed a woman, dragged her, wrong, utterly. If he's raped a woman, wrong, utterly. If he's forced a woman, pulled her into some kind of utterly. No, this is none of these things. They're saying that the women cannot resist the charm. So the argument is that these women are so vulnerable. So I want to ask that, look, how can you cut it both ways? How can you say, look, I just want to be honest. Let's just be honest. If a sheikh is calling you to a hotel room at 2 a.m. in the morning, I'm not saying he did this, but if he is, if a scholar is, he's not calling you there to read Sahih al-Bukhari. He's Bukhar, maybe, in the Arabic sense, steam. He goes, Chacha, Bukhari. Nahi, hum Bukhar kehte. I was saying Bukhar, you misunderstood it as Bukhari. He's not calling you to his room to go over, I don't know, Tafsir ibn Kathir. If he's calling you to his bedroom, what do you think he's calling you there for? Don't act stupid. Like, don't say, oh, but, because I thought, like, the truth is that these are choices. Now, what people are doing is they're modeling this based on a corporate environment. So in a corporate environment, when you're working, like you come to work now, there is an element of, there can be an element of abuse, exploitation. So for example, I pay you to come here, do a particular job. Now, let's say I pay you to do some administrative tasks. Now I start saying to you, hey, can you go get me a cup of tea? Hey, go run to the shop and get this for me. Hey, go do this for me. Hey, and I'm exploiting you because I know you're subordinate to me. And you can't just walk out without losing the job. And in some places, they could even sue you because you're in a contract. You're in a legally binding structure. So you can't just leave it. And you didn't sign up to this. You didn't sign up to, like me telling you to do this or telling you to do that, or even putting up with my certain kind of, like, let's say I start taking the mick out of you. I start like cussing you or being very sarcastic, and you don't like that. It's bullying. Now, in a corporate sense, that makes clear sense because you are bound to be there during these hours, let's say 9 to 5. Now, but you've signed up for something and you're getting this kind of treatment. Or you're getting sexual kind of harassment, or you're getting something and you don't like that. Okay, that makes clear sense. You see, people are trying to impose that paradigm on religion, but it doesn't really work that way because nobody is forcing you to be there. You are under no obligation to be there. You have no, if you go into a masjid and the imam is a jerk, so to speak, let's say, don't go to that masjid. Why, you keep going there, and then you're like, oh, but this guy is so, I don't get it. Why are you going? But this is and then they say, yeah, but you see, they will find naive people, and I want to ask that, look, the same people, let's take a classical fiqh example, people. In classical fiqh, there was the argument that women, this is like 1,000 years ago, women are capable of, doing their own affairs. They're capable of everything, trade, everything, except marriage or sexual affairs. Why? They said because men will take advantage of them. So after 1,000 years of fighting that and saying that, no, we're not naive, we can handle, just like every other affair, we can handle our sexual affairs as well. We can, we can kind of like, we don't need a man to arrange, because the classical fiqh said that they need a wali, a male, to arrange their marital affairs. So we don't need that. We can do it ourselves. And I have supported that. I have said that I feel women don't need a wali. I have argued for these positions, right? So then after that, some of these same women will say, oh, but, he took advantage of me because I was so naive. And you say, well, okay, I want to ask something. Imagine Osama Canon had said to you, instead of saying, oh, why don't you come to my hotel room? He had said, not that he said that, I got to stop saying that example, because he didn't say that. But instead of him saying, oh, why don't you have a relationship with me? Well, imagine it said, oh, can you bring me $20,000 tomorrow? Most of these women would be like, no, we're not stupid. Cha. So you're only stupid in this. Like, people will say, yes, but, we're drawn to, we can't resist this guy's charm. Don't get me wrong, Osama Canon, back then, may Allah have, grant ease to him and his family. He's suffering incredibly right now because of his health conditions. He was a very good looking, very charming, very charismatic, he was a stud imam. Like, let's just be honest. I mean, it makes sense all these women were attracted to him. That's not, the point is that if they had a bit of a vibe and he said to them, like, I want to make something clear. If Osama Canon had said to them that, look, I will marry you and I will run away from my wife and my family and I will do this. And from tomorrow, if you marry me, from tomorrow, I will do this and we will have this house. And here it is. I'm just waiting for you to just say yes. And then she said yes. And he said, okay. And then the next day he said, ha ha ha, get lost. That is clear deception. That is categorically wrong, unacceptable. And they are absolutely right. He just lied out of his teeth. But most cases were not like that. Most cases, no, not most his cases, most cases in general are never like that. They're about like things like persuasion or things like dynamic, like in the sense that a guy would say, oh, we've got a really good vibe and energy, and maybe, I think it'd be good if we got together. Now, you've got an aql. You know the guy's married. You're happy for him to, let's say, have his wife, not tell her, and come with you and have sex. You're happy for him to do that. Don't get me wrong. No guy's going to object to that. But the point is, you're happy for that. But then you can't take the fact that he would do the same to you. Because the point here is rejection. He later on probably rejected this, he probably called it off after a while. And they're like, oh my God, now because you called it off, it's abuse. Why is it? See, the problem is we have a generation or a wave, not a generation, but a wave of thought of certain people that feel self-entitled. That they feel that if the world owes me something, the world don't owe you jack. You know what? Look, don't get me wrong. I'm sorry, and I don't agree. I want to put, first of all, let's put a pause on that. Pause. I want to say, I personally, you can check my YouTube videos. I have been saying from the offset, I completely disagree and condemn people using religion to get stuff. Okay. I've never supported that. Using religion to get money, using religion to get power, using religion to get women, using religion. This kind of stuff to me is blasphemous personally to Allah and His Messenger. Like, you don't need, look, you can just interact with a person as a human being. There's plenty of, if it's women, there's plenty of women. If it's money, there's plenty of opportunities. You don't need to use Allah and His Messenger to do that. That said, put that. So I'm being very clear. I've never, ever been in support of things like that. And I've condemned. This is what I've said openly. Look, if people wanted to do muta, I've said, I don't believe muta is haram. People have said openly, oh, they wanted the mixing, of genders or people meeting outside. And I've said openly, these things are not haram. Look, live your life. Be true to yourself. Yeah. This kind of thing I'm saying from the offset. But if you go to somebody to have a relationship and it doesn't work out, most relationships, when they end, we need to understand this, people. 9 out of 10 probably relationships, when they end, one of the two couple will always feel some hurt. That's just the nature of relationships. Okay. Right. Now, that is the nature of it, because there will be a sense of rejection. So now, when you get, like, if a woman calls it off, I mean, in a minority of cases, maybe both couple are sensible, like that. Sorry, this is even if they're sensible. Maybe in a minority of cases, nobody feels hurt. But in the majority of cases, when a relationship ends, one person will feel some hurt. They may be very civil about it. They may be amicable, but they will feel some hurt. It's natural. We're human beings. We're creatures at the end of the day. People will feel that. Now, just because I feel hurt, like, let's say I feel hurt now as a person. Now, because I feel hurt and I feel wronged, I make an assumption that wronged is wrong. Now, that's not necessarily true. That because I feel wronged, it must be a wrong. That is not true. You see, if you don't want, like, let's say somebody doesn't want to be my friend, and I say, let's dumb the example down, and I say, oh, but come on, be my friend, let's go to, I don't want to bloody hang out with you, I don't want to be your friend, you bloody, you nerd, or I don't want to be your, now I'm going to feel hurt, naturally, but that's not abuse. That's not like, I can't say, oh, you know what, you abused me by not being my friend. That's just ridiculous. Now, in a relationship, I agree. I've said from the beginning that, look, when people, I prefer personally that people would actually do mut'ah than do these nikah bi niyat talaq. That, they marry somebody and they divorce them later on, because in a mut'ah, at least they both just on the same page. They know that, look, listen, we just like each other. We're going to have a go at this, but we know this is going to be short-lived. Nobody, it mitigates the sense of hurt. But the truth is that, look, if a guy has done that, right? Yes, he did it. Let's say he did it once, and now the community know, like some people know that, oh, he's got a wife and he married this girl and he left her. Now, why are you going to marry him? Why are you going? Like, haven't you got a brain? And you're like, well, oh, but I was naive, but I was vulnerable. Yeah, but what do you want, a medal for being stupid? Like, what? I don't understand. Like, okay, I could feel sorry for you, but that's like, oh, I'm sorry, I just buy everything every salesman gives to me. Oh, right, okay. You see, this is this fallacy of entitlement that people feel. They feel entitled, like they feel that the world owes me something. The world don't owe you jack. It's a cruel world out there. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Like, what are you surprised that people, but why would he be looking out for sex opportunities? Well, why wouldn't he? I'm just saying, why wouldn't he? He's a man, isn't he? Like, let's be honest, every single human being in this dunya is just seeking out their own interest. Let's just be honest about that. We don't like to say it, but it's the truth, right? So, somebody said, look, are you okay with someone doing mut'ah with your daughter? This is the kind of mentality of human beings that we're kind of dealing with within the Muslim community. Apart from the fact that my daughter is like only 8 years old and 5, and that's completely ridiculous. But when they're grown up, I would like to believe that they would have enough reason to take their own choices in life and be responsible, and they would choose responsibly. I would hope that I can give them that upbringing. I would hope that they don't get duped into. But if they choose to have a relationship with someone as they grow up, that's their choice. I would respect it. Like at the end of the day, why are you a control freak over people? Why are you like, I'm not saying you need to do these things, but some people are okay doing these things. Like, that's their choice. It's their life. Why are you judging them? It's not like, and this is stupid. Like, look, I might say, oh yeah, I don't like this. Fine. Somebody say, look, I don't like mut'ah. I would never do mut'ah. Don't. But what, why are you judging other people? That's the issue. Now, my point here is, first of all, Osama Canon was not doing mut'ah because as far as I'm aware, he doesn't believe mut'ah is permissible. He was doing nikah bi niyat talaq. He was doing nikah, but then later on, he was just doing a talaq. According to the majority of the Sunni tradition, that is fine. I don't see from a religious viewpoint, we could say, yes, I could say that, I don't like that. I don't like that a person, let's say, because I don't like the fact that, look, this guy, if he gets an opportunity, he'll sleep with this woman and he'll sleep with that woman and he'll sleep with that woman. And, you may not like that, and that's understandable. I'm with you. But then at the end of the day, you have to hold the women accountable as well. Why are they so easily saying, oh, yeah, and then saying, oh, but we're abused? You're not abused. You just made a choice. And you just, look, rejection equals hurt. Not all hurt equals abuse. That's the difference. And I think that needs to be we need to be clear on this point, because look, I want to touch up on this accountability. People say, look, we need to hold them to account. Why? Because he's an imam. Okay, I want to ask something. What we're saying is that this person has motives. He's motivated by self-interest. But isn't every human being? Why are we surprised that men are after sex? I mean, at the end of the day, our brain is wired that way. Men, their brain is more wired than the female brain to sex, generally speaking, from a scientific perspective. All the androgen receptors and things like this. Why are we so surprised that people are wired for, people have agreed for power, for money? Wouldn't you want to earn more money as a person? Oh, you greedy individual. Well, why? Like, at the end of the day, we're all like that. Everybody's doing. Yes, it doesn't mean you wrong people along the way. I agree with that. But it takes two to tango here. I'm not trying to say, look, I accept that. I'm not trying to justify what Osama Canon did. Having these marriages, I don't believe it was haram. He didn't do anything haram by the Sunni tradition. So, Ibn Abdul Barr writes clearly, the majority of ulama, he says, Jamhur Ahl Sunnah consider this to be halal. The Sahaba used to do it, all these people used to do it. I'm not saying it should be done though. But if you agree to it as a woman, and then you feel hurt when he rejects you, that's not nice. Obviously not nice, but it doesn't mean it's abuse. You can't just yell abuse on everything. Some people are even calling it sexual abuse, which is the connotation of rape. And it's nothing like that. And why are you making these allegations? And then the other thing is this is what I don't. Why are you bringing this out now when the guy's like literally, may Allah make things easy on him and his family. He's dying in a helpless, I mean, we're all ultimately kind of dying, but I mean, he's absolutely debilitated in a wheelchair. He can't take care of himself. He can't even speak anymore. How dare you? I mean, there's some things like values, for God's sake, some kind of principles that a human being has. He didn't drag you and pull you into a bedroom, for God's sake. You willfully chose to be in a relationship with him, and then he chose somebody other than you. But why are you surprised? You were happy for him to choose you as opposed to his wife. You're happy for him to, let's say, cheat, if that's the word you want to use, on his wife to go with you, but then you're not happy when he decides to choose another woman over you. And I'm not justifying his actions, but I'm trying to say, look, if you had beef with this, fine, voice it. You could voice it at the time, but is this really the time? There's a time and place for things. The guy is debilitated. He can't even speak, for God's sake. And they bring this up, and his own organization. Why? Just so they can carry on taking money and donations from people after he passes away. So they say, we took him to account. Tell me, does everybody that's doing this, and this is what I wanted to say about accountability. Wallahi, I will accept accountability if we have meta accountability. If we have meta accountability. Because only Allah's accountability is just. Human beings are driven by self-interests. These people who are holding him to account, do they not have a personal angle on this? Then how is that fair? You're judging his motives. Why can't we judge your motives? Ta'leef that are holding him, he was goddamn Ta'leef. I mean, I don't know a single person in Ta'leef other than him. And I couldn't name anyone. I just knew, Ustad Osama Canon. And that organization wants to carry on receiving money after he passes away, so they're throwing him under the bus. In such a stage, in a state of helplessness. Wallahi, one of the worst emotions. May Allah alleviate anybody and everybody from that suffering. To be in a state of helplessness is the worst. Like they speak, the studies done on people that were condemned and in condemned cells before they went to execution, the 2 weeks before, for example, that state of helplessness that you can't do anything. You're just there, waiting, a burden. It's, and what they do is they take out their claws in this stage. to attack a guy for their own interest, not for justice. This is not for justice. I want to make that clear. This is not for justice. This lady, look, I don't know this lady, Sana Saeed, but let's just be honest. I read her article, yeah. This thing, her saying, oh, I knew Osama Canon personally. I used to go to his circle for many years. I used to go for this. I used to go for this. I used to go for this. He did this. We have the right to hold him to account. I want to ask, what's your angle on this? Could it be, let's be honest, could it be that you were rejected by him? Or you never felt pretty enough to be selected by him? Could it be? Why not? Why is it wrong to judge when you're judging his motives? Is it just so you get a more you can gain traction on the back of this scandal? Are you just being an opportunist and seeking somebody's wounds just so you can get more traction and gain a promotion in your career? Or is it, this is the same lady who attacked Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and she said, when Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, the recent kind of scandal, and she said like, oh, in a personal story, I don't know, she went up to Hamza Yusuf and apparently Hamza Yusuf raised his voice out or something like that, and she's still suffering from the trauma. Acha. So you're still suffering from the trauma. So is this revenge on Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and all the people around him? You're picking them off one by one. I mean, what's your angle? For the love of God, don't say justice. It is nothing to do with justice. You know, this is the thing that annoys me. You know, بِذَا قَضَتِ الْأَيَّامُ مَا بَيْنَ أَهْلِهَا مَصَائِبُ قَوْمٍ عِنْدَ قَوْمٍ فَوَائِدُ. That this is how fate has dictated the laws of time. That the calamity of a people will be an opportunity for another people. That this, you know, this is why I call BS on this spiritual abuse thing. Don't be so naive. And if you are naive, I'm sorry to hear that you got duped. But what do you want a medal? Why do you think the world owes you anything? Why do you feel so entitled? It's a cruel dog-eat-dog world. You know, it's survival of the fittest. If you're so stupid that every time some guy sells you something, you keep buying it. Or every time somebody says, hey, get into my bed, you jump into bed with them. I mean, فَلَا يَلُومَنَّ إِلَّا نَفْسَهُ. You know, that person can only blame themselves. I mean, what? I'm not saying that we all wish that the world would not have such people. But the world is full of these people because it is the creature instinct people. This, you know, and I saw something that this one lady had said on social media. I'd rather he gets his punishment in this dunya than in the akhirah. Wallahi, that statement, it set me on fire, people. Honestly, this is the goddamn problem with some people of religion. They look at the cruelness, the cruelty of that lady saying that. She said, I would rather he gets his suffering in this dunya. Who the hell are you? Who made you God? You know, I'd rather he gets his suffering in this dunya. This is the mentality. This is how ISIS goddamn justify this stuff. Oh, it's better that you get it in this dunya. Honestly, this, and look, some people brought up that and this is another difficult question. Some people brought up things like, oh, there was domestic violence with his wife in the past and things like this. And he was, look, I don't know that I've heard that there were these kind of issues, but see, this is a difficult question because look, a question, and I want to put this to you people, that where do we draw the line in a private life? Like, these people argue that if you're a public figure, you have no right to a private life. Why not? That the public has a right to know anything about you. Why? Like, so look, domestic violence is utterly wrong. I absolutely condemn it. Look, but there's a question here. if, I don't know, I heard that his wife did not press charges and there were not these, look, I don't know. If they have reconciled, does it give people the right to expose this in public? And where do you draw the line? If a person, for example, has a gambling habit, let's just say, because what are we drawing the line with? Is it like, for example, legalities? We're saying, well, if it was illegal, we have the right to expose it. So because he did domestic violence with his wife, and although she, settled with it later on and reconciled, but still because it was illegal, we must expose it. So in that case, if he had a gambling habit or he drinks alcohol, that's not illegal. So, okay, no, then, or is it a moral thing? Because he's doing something immoral, we have the right to expose it. Like, people have a right to know that he does immoral things. Who doesn't do immoral things? Who doesn't? I want to ask that question. And where do you draw the line with this immorality? And who has a right it means the whole world has a right to know. Is that what we mean? That, like, some guy sitting in Lahore right now, somebody sitting in Mumbai has a right to know what somebody sitting in California is doing at home in his bedroom, but just because he's a public figure? Is this a right? Is this what, like an undisputed right? Is that what it is? Where do we draw this goddamn line? Like, how do we? And I absolutely do not believe people have a right. I know people will always leak these things. They will always expose people. They will always do these things because there's self-interest. But I don't believe people have a right, because where would you draw that? That is a question. If he smokes weed, if a person smokes weed, if a person watches pornography, somebody could say, well, he's not harming someone. He's on it, it's something he's doing. Is this a right? And that's probably most of all the men in that category. Is that a right? That the world has a right to know that he watches these things? If he masturbates because you might believe that's immoral, is that a right that the world has to know that this person does that? Is where do we get this impositionist, fascist kind of impositionism from? And so this is the thing. But it is a shame, the whole thing. And what hurt me was the fact that, one, I don't like this whole spiritual abuse thing. Two, right, somebody said no line exists with child abuse. I would agree with that, but I would agree with that, right? So that no line exists with child abuse, but I would believe that's a matter of legality, and that person needs to be taken to task from a legal perspective. But the issue is about a private life. Like, the question would be that if because these people feel, a lot of these journalists feel that if you're a public figure, you don't have a right to a private life. The public have a right to know everything that you're doing that they deem immoral. And that's like, well, this is not the Islam of the Quran wa Sunnah, people. This is not that Islam. Wallahi, anything from the seerah of the Prophet, was never about stuff like exposing. It was never about, if anything, there's a hadith about, look, if people have done sulah, do satar, parda, do like cover it if you can. That or take them to task on a legal perspective for accountability, but not about public entertainment, because this is just about entertainment. That's all. Because let's face it, we as human beings love gossip. We love it. It is one of the arguments why language was invented, just to gossip. And I just felt that, look, at this stage, when this person is in such a weak, debilitated position in his final stages, may Allah make things easy for him, for his family, that people are bringing out something that is old, They're bringing out something about, oh, he married these women and divorced them. Oh, he married them and he divorced them. And oh, the women, some of them may have been converts, but so they were so naive and so vulnerable. And any woman who enters a marriage is always so vulnerable. And you think, look, first of all, don't pick on this gender war, kind of backdrop, pitting men against women. Why do we need to pit men against women like this thing? Like, it's not, this is another thing which I totally can't stand. Like, why? The world is a better place when men and women cooperate, they coexist in reality, not just, and in that they have this understanding that it is the world and it is them. It is not them against each other. This is another thing. People present that all throughout history, men have oppressed women. No, they haven't. Men and women have just been oppressed by other people. That's the truth. It's not, men were not oppressed. Everybody was just being oppressed. And so, so this is why I have problems with this stuff. And I'll say it as I feel it. I don't care. People think, look, oh, no, you should, this is not politically correct to say that. I don't give a damn. The point is that, look, it takes two to tango. They need to own up to their own responsibility of the end. If they claim naivety, then they should have had a wali. Go with the classical fiqh opinion. Why are you acting so put a man in charge? If you feel that you can't handle any marital affairs because men are so always more powerful when it comes to sex matters, then put a man in the middle. Not literally, that would be quite a intriguing scenario. But my point is that, look, or just handle it and accept that, where things go wrong, they go wrong. But then don't do this later on don't do an expose for money. Don't do an expose for compensation when a man is, on his dying deathbed. Have some respect for the guy. And the guy, at the end of the day, served the community. This is another thing that really, he did good. He especially the work I heard about his prison work. I heard he did wonders in the prison thing. And I don't even know too much about. I just know the brief things that I've come across. And I've been like, wow. And once again, it's not to cover up his actions. He may have been an absolute, like a jerk or whatever they're saying to some of these women. He may have had bad akhlaq. He may have. I don't know him like that. But even if he did, say it then, not now when he's in this state and you're just making his family suffer. But yeah, people, I'm sorry I had to kind of go on about that, but I felt that it needed to be said. And this is another thing. I think there needs to be a space where these conversations need to be had. Okay, so this is part of the reason I'm going to be doing my podcast, hopefully by the end of this year. It's beginning. Guys, I'm going to wrap this up, inshallah. Much love, as always, for hacking it right till the end. Right, you know how it is, people, right? So as always, remember me in your kind du'as. In the words of Mir Taqi Mir, where he says, Ab to jate hain but kade se mir, that now let us go from this house of idols. Ab to jate hain but kade se mir, phir milenge gar khuda laya. That if God wills, we'll come back another day. Take very good care of yourselves, man. Much love. Stay blessed. Stay smiling, people. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.